Hey now folks, Nick here. This is Board Game Brawl, and today we're going to take a look at the game Darkest Night, designed by Noel Le Bienvenu and published by Victory Point Games. Now, this is a fantasy-themed cooperative game for 1 to 4 players, where the players are each sort of fantasy archetype heroes like the knight, the prince, the rogue, the wizard, the druid, and they're trying to stop an evil necromancer who is running around the countryside dropping down blights of evil, skeletons, zombies, curses. And if this necromancer manages to destroy and curse and defile the last bastion of hope in the land, the monastery, then the heroes lose. But if the heroes can find these holy relics and either destroy the necromancer with one of them or get all the relics back to the monastery, the heroes win, everyone rejoices, huzzah. Now, the interesting thing here is that Victory Point Games is known for their war games and for more deep, strategic, sort of abstract-y games, I guess you could say, where they just have a lot of little bits and pieces and complex rules and maps. And Darkest Night, while it's a bit complex compared to some other games in my collection, is actually a fairly straightforward cooperative game. So it's a bit outside of their wheelhouse for that. And I'd also like to take a special note because this is one of the very first Victory Point games that actually the first Victory Point game I ever played. I didn't know much about the company, but they're actually a very fascinating company. They specialize in actually being more of a workshop for upcoming game designers, and they teach people how to design games while they're going through the whole design process of the games. And you would think that that would mean that the games they release are not all that professional in quality, but quite the opposite. Although one thing they do is that they kind of their components take a little bit of a hit in order to their whole motto is the game is the thing, I think is what it is. And in other words, the gameplay is the most important thing about the game. The components shouldn't matter all that much. So the components aren't as nice as you might expect from other types of war games and Ameritrashy type games. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that a game isn't very solid mechanically and that it isn't very, more importantly, fun. So, cooperative fantasy game, I'm all there. Let's see if it hits all the right notes for me. Let's take a look at it, and I'll come back and tell you my final opinion. Alright, there's a lot of little bits and details to this game, and I can't possibly go over everything, but I'm going to give you a brief overview just to let you know whether or not this is the type of game that's going to appeal to you or not. So here is just the basic setup. You have the map of the land that the Necromancer is trying to destroy. You have the brave heroes who are going to be in the monastery of their little standees. That's where they start, which is the only safe place in the land for now. The Necromancer himself is always going to start in the ruins. Him or herself, I'm not sure. Necromancers, they don't really have any physical bodies left, so they could be male or female, but who knows. Let's try to be gender neutral with that. And we have the relics. There's always 4 relics in the game. They always start in the same spots: the mountains, the swamps, the ruins, and the forest. And at the beginning of the game, the Necromancer gets a jump on the heroes and is able to put his little blights down, 6 of them to be precise, all across the land. And the way you're going to determine where those go, or which specifically blights come out, is with the map cards, which I'll get back to in a moment. And basically, the heroes have 2 win conditions for this game. Both of them involve the relics. If they can find at least one of these relics by finding 3 keys anywhere on the map and then getting 3 keys to one of the locations with the relics and using an action, they can actually acquire the relic. They'll take the little chest, flip it over to this side, and boom, every hero can carry 1 relic and 1 relic only. And they can freely trade relics with each other, and the downside is that relics, while they're actually going to add +1 to your attack rolls, they're going to make it much harder to hide and keep safe from the Necromancer. However, if you have at least 1 relic, and the heroes all get to the same location as the Necromancer, and if they've already defeated every one of the Necromancer's blights that's in that same location, they have a shot at destroying the Necromancer. But they have to get rid of those blights first, because the Necromancer is going to throw his own forces in front of the heroes to try and save himself. And once you have that shot at the Necromancer, you're going to roll a die. And if you can get a 6, and it has to be a 6, because the Necromancer's defense is 7, and you only get +1 from that relic, you destroy the Necromancer, and boom, game over, the heroes win. That can be kind of tough, but if you want to go the perhaps easier but much longer route, if the heroes can find all 4 relics, and remember, it's only 1 relic per hero, if they can get all 4 relics and drag them back to the monastery and have them in the monastery at the same time, they can complete a ritual with an action that will effectively destroy all the evil in the land, including the Necromancer, and huzzah, the heroes win. Now, it can be a little bit easier to get the relics here because you can actually stow items, including relics, in the monastery, but nevertheless, you have to drag everyone back to the monastery in order to win. But that's the end of the game. How do we get there? What's the journey? So at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to get a hero. Now, there's always going to be 4 heroes in the game, even if there's only 1 to 3 players. So if it's less than 4 players, someone's just going to have to double up or triple up on heroes, or in this case, a solo play, quadruple up on heroes. There's actually 9 heroes in the game box. I'm just going to show you 4 that I think have the coolest art, because I'm shallow that way. So here we go. We have the Rogue, who looks really cool. And over here on the side, you're going to have a little text box that's going to tell you in actual thematic terms what the hero is good at. So just really briefly, the Rogue says, a subtle hero who can escape notice and can perform special tasks and can escape the Necromancer's Ebon Grip, yada yada yada. There's 2 important things on the bottom of this card. The top little row here is Grace with the little wings, and every hero's starting Grace and the bottom number Secrecy is determined by wherever the circle is. So for Grace, you'll have this little feathered symbol. Now you're going to start it there. And for Secrecy, pardon me, which is this thing here, the little S, you're going to start it wherever their Secrecy is. And you see that the Rogue's benefit is that he has like really, really high Secrecy, the best you could possibly get, for him anyways. So that's that. And then the Knight, there's the Knight. She's, her little blurb talks about how she's got great offensive power and is really good at destroying Blights. The Prince isn't much of a warrior, but can inspire the people and give bonuses to the other heroes. The Seer can basically manipulate fate or see fate and buff the heroes and give them ideas on how to better search and things like that. And you notice that they all have different starting graces and secrecy. So obviously the Seer is not going to be really great at surviving physical attacks, but her secrecy is okay, and it's all about her special powers. Well, what special powers are those? At the beginning of the game, each character has a deck of cards, which represent all the potential powers those heroes can get. Now, first off, there's not much in the way of art on any of these cards. I'm just going to say that right now. This is the sum total, basically. That gives you an indication of what most of the art is, just little symbols, but okay, whatever. Let me just show you a few. Now, at the beginning, you're going to look for the cards that have that little clover symbol up in the top corner. Each hero has 4 cards like this. You're going to choose 3 of those cards as your starting powers, put them face up in front of you. So let's just say these are the 3, because they're very simple, that I chose for the Knight. Sprint. Now, anytime you see Tactic, a Tactic is an ability that's always on. So long as a card is yours and face up in front of you, this always happens. So this lets you elude with 2 dice. Well, that's really good, because when you elude or attack, you usually only roll 1 dice, and you're looking for the highest number you can possibly get on any of the dice that you roll. More dice means more odds of rolling a good number. Charge. Same thing as that other card. It's a Tactic, but this is for your fight dice. And Hard Ride. Now, this is an action card. It requires your action to use. Every hero only gets 1 action on their turn, so actions are very valuable. And this lets you move twice, but you don't gain any secrecy. Well, what does that mean? Well, normally it takes an action to move to an adjacent space on the map, and whenever you do, you're going to gain a secrecy. In other words, you're moving, so it's harder for the Necromancer to find you. But in this case, you get to move twice, but you don't gain any secrecy, because you're riding a horse. It's kind of hard to hide. So once you've chosen your heroes, every player is going to get their cards, and you're going to put your cards out in front of each of the players, and you're going to put your little grace and secrecy markers there, and you're basically ready to go. Now, you have these little sun and moon markers, which are going to help you determine whether each hero has acted. It's kind of pointless, but whatever. And because this is a fully cooperative game, the players can choose to take their turns in any order that they want, and you can change it from round to round. If you say, oh, I really think the Knight should go first now because she's in a better position to take care of this Blight over here and search for a key or whatever, then you can do that, and you can change it next round if you want. But like I said, you have 1 action. There's a number of things you can do. Moving is an action. If you're at the monastery, you can pray to get grace back, although it's a random roll. And any area except for the monastery, you can do a search. When you do a search, there's going to be a search difficulty here. It's like for the forest, it's a 4. And these little icons here, they're supposed to tell you like what the better odds, what kind of item you have really good odds of finding. Here is a key and chest. It's not a guarantee, but it means you have better odds of finding them. And remember that keys are very important to the win condition because keys are needed to get the relics. You need 3 of them. Alright, so when you choose to do a search, you'll roll the die. If you succeed, hey, I failed. Hey, I made it. You're going to take the top card off the map deck. Now, that looks familiar, right? I told you I'd get back to these. What do the map cards say? The maps have every single location of the game on the side here. And then you have all these little blight symbols. If you're searching, go ahead and ignore those for right now. What you're looking at are all these little search icons. And when you successfully search, which you must have if you drew this card, you're going to look for what location you're actually in. So in this case, the forest. Now I find vanishing dust. And when I find an item like that, I'm actually going to take, there's these little chits that represent the items. So, and it'll tell you on the back what it is as well. So, and now I'm going to tell you that your best friend in this game is the back of the rule book. Because the back of the rule book has all of the different items and what they actually do, reminders about the Holy Relic and what it does, reminders about the Necromancer's turn, and what all the Blights do. So this is essential right here. And I wish that you didn't need this. I wish there were other ways to get all this information, but c'est la vie. Now, like I said, there's other types of items. You really, really want these keys, but it's random chance. You need to go to an area where it's more likely that the keys are going to pop up by looking at the icons on the map and hope for the best because that's your win condition. And you can also do things like attack Blights on your turn. Now, attacking a Blight is fairly simple. These are what Blights look like, and a lot of them do different things. This is a Corruption Blight, and there's a little number here on the back. Now, you're usually going to want to look at the other side of Blights because this gives you more information on it. This is the same number from the front, and that's its might number. When a hero on his or her turn actively chooses to attack a Blight, this is the number you want to look at. You're basically going to roll a die, or as many dice as you can roll from using powers. Hope for at least a 5 or a 6 on one of those dice, and if you get that number, if you meet or beat it, you're going to be able to kill this Blight, take it off the map. It's gone. Don't worry about it. But while it's still out there, it's going to mess with the players. So this Corruption in particular says no bonuses. What does that mean? Well, some power cards from the heroes are going to say bonus in italics. And if you are in a region that says no bonuses and you haven't destroyed this Blight, guess what? You don't get those bonuses until this Blight is gone. So that could be bad. Also, I should point out that if you lose a fight with a Blight, this happens. In this case, it's exhaust all powers. So you don't die, but all of your powers get flipped over or turned to the side, however you want to do it, meaning you cannot use them again until you rest or until some other effect gives you your powers back. So that can be bad. But those aren't the only types of Blights that are out there. Some of them are creatures, like skeletons. Yay, every game with fantasy's got to have skeletons, right? So it's got the same number here. There's the 5, and there's the 5 on the back, and that's the same thing. It's the might number. If you choose to attack it, that's the number you need to meet or beat. Now, in this case, it's got a skull and crossbones as a fail condition, this little green thing over here to the right. What that means is that if you fail to defeat it with your roll, it's going to deal a wound to you. And if you don't have any grace to lose, you're going to die. If you do have a grace to lose, you'll just move your tracker down. But here's a bunch of new numbers in the middle. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you do not attack this Blight and kill it, or you can't, and you end your turn in a location that has one or more of these creature Blights here, you're going to have to fight or elude these creatures. In other words, they're coming after you. The shield represents combat or fight. The eye represents eluding the creature. So you need to decide which one you're going to try to do, and then roll the die and hope you meet or beat that number. Now, the reason they break it down like that is because certain heroes have a better shot because of their powers of either fighting or eluding. So you get to choose which one you want to do. If you succeed, nothing happens. You've just effectively either fended off or escaped the monster. If you fail, again, you're going to take a wound. And sometimes they do nastier things. But that's the gist of Blights. And other Blights can do different things, like the Desecration is going to can add more Blights to the map from the Darkness track, and so on and so forth. And let's talk about the Darkness track. And in fact, let's talk about the Necromancer. Now, the Necromancer is the big bad guy, the main guy of the game. And I haven't told you what his win condition is yet, but now let's talk about that. So I said that the heroes can win by defeating him with the relic or getting all the relics to the monastery. Well, the Necromancer's win condition involves a monastery as well. If he can get 5 Blights in the monastery, he wins the game. Now, that's really hard for the Necromancer to do because Blights don't normally pop up from drawing the cards on the map. There's really not an easy way for him to do that. The only place normally he can put Blights, and on his turn he's going to move around, and everywhere that he goes he's going to be dropping these Blights like pieces of candy for the heroes. That sounded weird, but you get my drift. If there's already 4 Blights in a spot, in other words, the heroes have just been doing an awful, awful job of taking care of these Blights, then they are going to cascade. So let's say that this Evil Presence Blight was supposed to go here in the village. Guess what? It ain't going there. It's going in the monastery. And you don't have a choice. Now, the heroes have to decide that are they just going to let that go and go about their mission, or are they going to run back to the monastery and try to take care of that? Because if 5 of those Blights end up there, the heroes lose. But it gets worse than that. There's a darkness track here at the bottom of the board. Every Necromancer's turn, this is going to go up. And other card events might force, and failed attacks by the heroes might force a darkness track to go up faster. And as it goes up, worse and worse things are going to happen. So if it goes up to 10, it's going to create more and more Blights if the Necromancer's location already doesn't have any. If you get above 20, it's going to create an extra Blight whenever the Necromancer's movement die, where it determines where he moves, comes up as a 1 or a 2. And it's just going to get worse and worse. And if it ever gets all the way up to 30, then it can go no further, which you might be like, oh, okay, no big deal. But if that happens, and more things would cause a darkness track to go up above 30, like the Necromancer's turn, a Blight pops in the monastery instead. So in other words, the longer the game draws out, the more likely it is that the Necromancer is going to win. So you need to defeat that Necromancer as quickly as possible. But until you get that relic, it's very dangerous. And like I said, on his turn, you're going to roll a die, and wherever he is, you're going to look at these little symbols on the map, and that's where the Necromancer is going to move. And your secrecy is going to represent how well you can hide from that Necromancer. If you're in the same location, and he hasn't spotted you with his die roll, he'll roll a die, and if he rolls lower than your number of secrecy, he doesn't spot you. But if he rolls higher than your number, not equal, higher, he spots you and he gets to attack you. And in fact, if he's in a different location and spots you, he won't even roll a die to move. He's going to automatically move to your location and try to take a swipe at you. Just being in the same location is going to make you lose more and more secrecy. And if you start your turn there, he's going to automatically fight you. So that is really, really bad. And until you get a relic, you don't even have a shot at killing him. So that's basically how the game goes. You're going to be moving around the map, trying to search to find those keys to get those relics, and maybe finding other helpful items and getting more powers in the meantime, and vanishing dust and things like that. All the while trying to avoid the Necromancer until the right time to either slay him or avoid him altogether and get all those relics back to the monastery, all the while destroying the Blights that the Necromancer leaves. And that's Darkest Night. Now, it's inevitable that Darkest Night is going to draw comparison to Pandemic. And even though you wouldn't really know it to look at the board, when you actually play the game, you kind of get that feeling because you have this Necromancer who's dropping these Blights down, and the Blights can get to be overwhelming if there's too many in one spot and cascade back into the monastery, which is what you need to win, the place that you need to win the game. And so you have that kind of feeling and that kind of tension, and running around the map and trying to put out these fires, so to speak. You can definitely get that feeling, but really the game is very different from the beginning to the end. From the setup to the end, you have, there are roles in Pandemic as well, just like you can take on a role in this game, but it didn't feel as much like just a role card that I was being handed in this game. It felt like a class, like a role-playing game class. Obviously much lighter than that. It wasn't that I was actually creating a character and buying their equipment, and there isn't any of that little customization. But there is a little bit of customization because you're picking this character, you're picking some of the starting powers that you want to be able to use, and then during the course of the game, you have the option to potentially get some more powers from your deck and customize your character more, which can be a little tricky. Sometimes it's random. If you get really lucky, you can pick the one that you really want. But that is a very nice touch that Pandemic doesn't have. And, honestly, after I've played this a couple of times, all of the sort of trappings of a Pandemic type game sort of fell away, and this really came into its own as a unique game that I think could sit side by side with Pandemic on my shelf. So if you haven't guessed, I really, really enjoy this game. I mean, I am predisposed to like any cooperative game and any game that has a fantasy setting. And even though this is a victory point game, and obviously they're more known for just kind of, just getting the gameplay out there mechanically wise, I did actually feel like the theme was very attached to the mechanics of this game. It really felt cool running around and, defeating the monsters that the Necromancer drops behind you, the monsters with the magical spells and curses and things like that, but also trying to hide from the Necromancer. That seems like such a minor thing, but it felt really cool, and it added another layer of tension. Like, oh no, I really have to, having to keep track of not just your grace, which is like your life points essentially, but also having to keep track of your secrecy and trying to stay hidden from that Necromancer, and then if you know the Necromancer is coming after you, getting back to that monastery as quickly as possible, because dying in this game hits not as bad a consequence because you can restart with a new character with less powers and stuff like that, but nevertheless, every turn is crucial in this game. And if you do not want to die and you don't want to leave the rest of your teammates hanging out there like that, so there's I'll keep saying the word tension. I love tension in co-ops because I love co-ops that are difficult and just get your blood boiling and get you going, because that's one of the, because you're working together, and when you have that kind of tension, I think it helps to eliminate the alpha gamer problem that games like Pandemic tend to have, because everyone has to be concerned with what they're doing and concerned with what powers they're going to use next. And I think this game does that very, very well. The game has some minor problems. I think that there's people in my group who do not like the dice rolling, and I kind of agree with that. It doesn't feel that cool just to roll a 6-sided die, and essentially it just comes down to what the higher number is. And obviously you're using cards to influence that number, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just have to do the chance roll, and that doesn't feel very thematic at all, so I'm not a big fan of that. I do think that the components actually aren't all that bad. I really like some of the artwork on the character cards, but then again, I don't really like the artwork on the event cards and the map cards, all of that, and the cards were not cut all that well. The little standees for your heroes, not all that great. I'm not sure what else I could have done and still made the game as cheaply as they did, but that kind of drags you out of the theme a little bit. But again, this company's logo or motto is the game is a thing, and the game here is solid, and it's really, really great. And you can always pimp out your game if you're really concerned about it with little hero miniatures. If you play D&D, you've probably got a ton of them laying around. Other things that I don't really like all that much, I think that actually the heroes have the advantage in this game. While it was definitely difficult at times, I've played this game 3 times now, and I've never felt like it was for sure that we were going to lose. I've had that feeling in other cooperative games where, like Ghost Stories especially, where at a very early point it's like, okay, we're just playing to try and have fun now, right? Because we're not going to win. I didn't get that feeling in Darkest Night. Maybe there are ways to adjust the difficulty forward and back, so maybe I need to look into that, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, sometimes while I am used to having a very hard time in co-ops, other people aren't, and that can exclude some people from the game who aren't used to having a really hard time and they want to win. But everything else about the game I really like. Like I said, I think it's got a great theme. I think it's got a great arc. I think as things build up and as you have that tension, and I really, when you do have a hard time and you win in a battle and you're able to get those holy relics and either get them back to the monastery or go one-on-one, toe-to-toe with the Necromancer, it's really a great kind of epic feeling that I think is carried across much better than games like Pandemic. And I like Pandemic, but I think that the theme is kind of weak in that one. Darkest Night manages to get that right. It manages to get most of the mechanics right. And I think if you like co-ops, if you like fantasy themes, this is one that you should definitely be on your radar. You should definitely check it out. The components aren't the best. It's got that dice rolling that's not all that great, but maybe you need to try it first. But you should definitely look into it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Other people in my group enjoyed it quite a bit. And Victory Point Games is now officially on my radar. So what can I say? My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl. Highly recommend this game, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day and in every way. Take care.